Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the X-Men vs. the Avengers, issue number 2, cover dated May 1987. The cover is by Marc Silvestri, inked by Joe Rubinstein, and it is a really eye-catching image, very striking, very memorable. The cover caption, "The Temptation of Magneto," gives the clue as regards what's happening here. Magneto, of course, has reformed since Uncanny X-Men issue 200 and has taken over the role of Professor X as head of the School for Gifted Youngsters. And there is a question for readers and creators, including the likes of Roger Stern, as to regards how could it be that Magneto would truly reform, skeptical of Chris Claremont's plan for Magneto. So in this storyline, Asteroid M, portions of it have fallen to Earth, and one portion has fallen in Kampuchea, and Magneto has gone to acquire what might be preserved from the asteroid. And one of the things it turns out that he finds is his old Master of Magnetism helmet. And of course that is a signifier as to the fact that he may be returning to his old evil ways. But I really like here the design of this image from Silvestri, in particular the decision to have Magneto's face in almost complete silhouette, except for his eyes there. And then this particular detail is the one that stands out the most. He's got this grin on his face, and we can see the teeth there, but it looks as though the gums are in white, which gives me the impression anyway that he might be frothing at the mouth with evil glee, putting the helmet back on. And then you can see in the background the surprise and consternation of She-Hulk, Captain America, Storm, and Wolverine, who's got his claws popped, of course. So let's open this one up to the first page. On the first page, there are 23 pages of story and art in this particular issue. There is a catch-up on key moments from the first issue, portions of the asteroid falling to Earth, the Avengers seeking to avert disaster in Cleveland, which is where one portion of the asteroid was falling. We've got Magneto listening to the news and deciding to investigate the other major portion hitting Kampuchea. Then we have the Avengers show up there. You can see the temples there in the background. And they put some manacles on, degaussing manacles on Magneto. And then the X-Men show up, and then the Soviet super soldiers and Crimson Dynamo show up. And so now we've got a three-way standoff and Magneto in the middle of it. So let's turn the page and we get a double page spread by Marc Silvestri. So you can see there that he had his work cut out for him, handling all these different characters in this double page spread as they all start attacking each other. So it's no easy task to make this read, and it reads well. And you can see there the various matches that are happening between Crimson Dynamo striking at Thor there, and then we've got the Titanium Man striking at Captain America. And here we've got, I think his name is Vanguard, throwing his sickle at She-Hulk, who catches it. And here in the background, we've got Rogue, she's observing. We've got Havoc. I mean, he's a powerful mutant. Who's he going to tackle? And Magneto over here standing to the side. So well handled in terms of its readability, its legibility by Silvestri. I do have a criticism though, and that is, as you can see, the figure who is in our foreground is She-Hulk. But if it was me handling this, not that I could draw any better than Silvestri, I think I'd put some of the bigger figures in the foreground, like Captain America, Thor here, Wolverine. I'd put them in the foreground rather than She-Hulk. But in any case, that was Silvestri's choice. He does like drawing women, and like, I mean, let's not complain over much. So here's the creative team down here: Roger Stern, writer; Marc Silvestri, penciler; Joseph Rubinstein on inks; Joe Rosen on letters; and Christy Shield rounds out the creative team on colors. Now you can see here too, another important detail is the editors of the Avengers title and Uncanny X-Men are co-editing this particular crossover between the two different teams. Now let's continue with the story. We see here Crimson Dynamo and he is thinking to himself, it cannot be, my armor's power supply is overloading, computer systems are shutting down, must land before I lose control of my boot jets. So this was all down to Captain Marvel. She thought, as she says there to him, I thought a few extra megavolts would take the wind out of your sails. That piece of dialogue makes me laugh. Here comes Captain America, and he leaps into Crimson Dynamo with his vibranium shield. So interesting choice here too from Silvestri to vary the layouts. 7 panels on the page, but he chooses to have this one with open borders. What's going on here with Ursa Major, which basically just means big bear in Latin. He goes to attack Dr. Druid, and Storm is thinking to herself, Avenger? What's he talking about? And so Ursa Major here falls flat on his face. That's a classic Silvestri device there, where when somebody is on their face on the ground, he will kind of take away the lower jaw, which really conveys how flush with the ground the face is. It's a staple of Silvestri's art to this day. So Ursa Major is confused. First my prey becomes a phantasm, and now the jungle itself attacks me. Have I gone mad, or has the world gone mad? But it's all Dr. Druid's doing. You saw what I wished you to see, Man Bear, he thinks to himself, and those vines are mine to manipulate. And then he says aloud, such is the power of Dr. Druid. So there he is, gesticulating with his hands, rather like Doctor Strange does, because Dr. Druid is a kind of Doctor Strange stand-in, featuring on the Avengers lineup of the mid-80s. So here now is Rogue. So she was standing there with Magneto, and the X-Men came to rescue Magneto, and so she lifts him up. Let's hightail it out of here, she says. Meanwhile, Wolverine says he's going to stay. These Ruskies want to fight Storm. They got one. So he rushes into battle. Havoc too. Let's see what Storm is saying. She's saying if the Avengers defeat them, they will fight us to recapture Magneto. We must go now. Okay, so they don't go into battle. So they follow Storm's orders and they hightail it to the Blackbird. But Crimson Dynamo spots them. The X-Men the X-Men escape with Magneto, he says, pointing after them. And Captain America says, let's call a truce, Dynamo. Help us bring Magneto to justice before the World Court. So the title of this one is, let's look at it again. Here it is, Uneasy Allies. So are the Soviet super soldiers and the Avengers going to team up? Niet, says Crimson Dynamo. He has already been found guilty of sinking a submarine by a special tribunal of the Supreme Soviet. So that's a reference to Magneto sinking the submarine Leningrad in Uncanny X-Men 150. So now we get a demonstration of Dazzler's powers there, and she's thinking to herself, Cap and the Armoured Man look like they might follow us. I can't let that happen. I hate doing this. The Avengers were my friends once, but we need time to think. So she dazzles both of them. Great spotting of blacks here, cast by Dazzler's light show. And Dynamo and Captain America are blinded with the brilliance of her light powers. Hundreds of yards away, Rogue is fleeing to the Blackbird with Magneto. Once we're airborne, she thinks there's no way they can catch us. Yeah, I'll bet our little old Blackbird can fly circles around one of the Avengers' Quinjets. That's an interesting thought, that the Blackbird is a superior jet to the Quinjet. And Rogue continues thinking, betcha they don't have anything that's half as fast, but they do. So just at that moment, Captain Marvel, that is Monica Rambeau in this particular era, shows up, and she's got this relaxed pose, like she's just sitting and flying there beside Rogue. Moving Magneto out of harm's way is a good idea, Rogue, she says. Just don't go too far. As soon as we've calmed the Soviets down, we'll be taking Magneto back into custody and making sure he goes to trial. We don't want to fight the X-Men, but if we must, we will. A word to the wise, she says as she flies back to the fight. And Rogue is impressed. Lordy, she changed directions without even slowing down. We could be in big trouble. And you can see that expression on her face as well. So that's a really nicely handled scene by Silvestri. I also like the work there with the gnarled tree trunks of the Campuchian jungle. That's very well done. And now we're going to see Thor versus Titanium Man. Now this Thor is Sigurd Jarlsson. That's his civilian identity. And Thor says, "Your armor is strange to me, giant, but your power and hue is that of the Titanium Man." So he responds, "That is the name I've taken, Thor, but I'm not the man you once fought. My power is much greater." So a reference to way back in Avengers 130, but that was a different Thor. Titanium Man says, "Did that cause you pain as you grabbed Thor's wrist?" "Good. Did that cause you pain, Thunder God? I suspected that your new body armor might shield a weakness I could exploit. Even in the motherland, your power is legendary, but it appears to be no match for my technological might. If I wished, I could." But Thor gets a reprieve because Titanium Man's got a problem. "What? My limbs move independently of my will? Something is overpowering my armor control systems." So once again, it is Captain Marvel. And Thor is taken by surprise. "His weakness was your doing." "Then there is no glory in this victory. Better to have fallen with honor," he says. That's intriguing. He didn't appreciate the assist. Simultaneously, we've got She-Hulk there punching Vanguard, and she thinks, "I'd read that this Vanguard chump had some sort of personal force field around him, so I didn't bother to pull my punch, but he's better protected than I thought. I felt that blow as much as he did. If I hadn't been better braced, I'd have been knocked on my backside." So who shows up to back up Vanguard except for Darkstar? And she excoriates the green-skinned witch. "If you've hurt my brother, I'll make you wish you'd never been born." So she lassoes She-Hulk with her Darkstar energy, and also Black Knight as well. She says, "I'm encasing you and the She-Hulk in bonds of dark force, bonds you shall never break." So Black Knight drops his sword there. That's not good for him. And then there is a reveal, a surprise. Who has she actually bonded with the Dark Force energy? It's her own compatriots, Vanguard and Ursa Major. And it's all the doing of Dr. Druid, who was sneakily operating there in the background. "What I wished you to see, child, do not worry. No one will be harmed. Be at peace. Let my will be yours." So Dr. Druid is kind of like a creepy guy. That's exactly the kind of thing that Professor X would balk overdoing in terms of the ethics of it. But Dr. Druid doesn't have any qualms whatsoever. Less than 3 miles away, the X-Men are aboard the Blackbird. And Storm, of course, with her lock-picking skills, is helping Magneto out of those degaussing manacles. And Rogue is importuning Wolverine. We gotta get out of here, sugar. He says, "Don't remind me." "I'm serious," she says. "We gotta lose ourselves before that Captain Marvel can find us." But Magneto, he's got something to say himself. "No, we mustn't run, not yet. Part of Asteroid M lies not far from here. I must inspect it. I didn't want to involve the rest of you, but as long as you're here." And at this point, Havoc loses it. "Are you crazy?" he exclaims. "We trail you halfway around the world to save your hide, and now you want us to help you recover some old real estate?" That's a really good shot of Havoc there, enraged. And let's turn the page. So Dazzler tells Havoc to calm down. "Your power levels are building too fast. If you lose control now, the shockwave would rip the Blackbird apart, and that wouldn't be good." So he says, "All right, I'll watch it, but I want to know what's so blasted important about some chunk of rock." Because Havoc is really skeptical of Magneto's reformation. And Magneto explains, "A section of my old base may be intact on that chunk of rock, as you put it. Any equipment which survived impact is too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands." So Magneto explaining himself there in terms of a concern for the safety of the world. But Wolverine asks, what makes you think that your hands are the right ones? Back when you lived and worked on that asteroid, you were making plans to make the world safe for mutant kind by taking it over, and you were perfectly willing to torture or kill anyone who stood in your way. And so the imagery here is a callback to Uncanny X-Men 112 and 113 by Claremont and Byrne. So we get to see Silvestri's version of that here. Again, you've got that grinning Magneto enjoying what he's doing to Colossus and Wolverine in the panel. Those days are behind me, Wolverine, he says. And Storm says, the Avengers must be aware of this asteroid fragment, Magneto. If it is any danger, they will deal with it. Our job is to get you two. But Magneto interrupts her. He says, no, I insist upon finding it by myself if necessary. So the X-Men let him go. He's made his decision, says Storm, and placed himself outside our protection. And Wolverine angrily says, let's go. We're wasting our time here. Meanwhile, the Avengers are pondering the situation where Dr. Druid is controlling Darkstar so that she has put those dark energy bonds all around the Soviet super soldiers, including Crimson Dynamo. He's outraged. He says, this is an outrage when the world hears how you interfered in the capture of a dangerous criminal. But She-Hulk goes right over to him and she says, oh, shut up. We had Magneto in custody until you busted in. We're authorized to act as special deputies of the World Court. I'll bet you didn't even check with the local government before you barged into Kampuchea. And so that's them told. And Dr. Druid says, Darkstar's trance will last another hour, Avengers. We needn't linger here any longer. So off they go to the Quinjet. That's a pretty good panel there of them moving, running. And yeah, well done by Silvestri. And now Magneto. I like this sequence here in this particular page. So he's honing in on the magnetic field effect from the chunk of asteroid M that's fallen into the lake. Of course, he thinks to himself, that explains why there was no impact crater visible from the air. The asteroid fragment must have struck near the center of the lake. I really like Silvestri's choice here to have Magneto standing in the shallows of the lake in silhouette with his cloak flowing in the wind as well. And then we've got the foreshortening here of his hands out. Yes, it is out there. I can feel it. I must reclaim it. An interesting inking here from Joseph Rubinstein indicating the electromagnetic force lines of Magneto's application of his power. Good visualization of the bubbling water there as the asteroid emerges. Also, we've got some Kirby crackle running through things too. And so Magneto, at his command, the chunk of asteroid M rises from the lake. And I can see that Joseph Rubinstein is using some white paint there as well to indicate the splashing water from the asteroid fragment. So Magneto thinks there is more here than I dare to hope. The entire central core of asteroid M has survived intact. My base is once again mine. So is he going to return to his old ways? While already far to the south, the Blackbird is up in the air and Wolverine's annoyed. Flaming waste of time. Right from the start, we never should have gone after him. Should have let him face the Avengers and the Ruskies on his own. But Storm reminds him, Magneto's a mutant, Wolverine. For good or ill, he's become one of us. We owe him the benefit of the doubt and our aid. And Rogue makes the point, sides Wolvie, wasn't it you who said we should chase Maggie down in the first place? And that's correct in the previous issue. And I like this little business where Wolverine's smoking on his cigarette there and Rogue is coughing from the smoke. All right, he says, I'm just ticked off. We gave him a hand and he spit on it. But look who is sneakily keeping an eye and ear out in respect of what the X-Men are up to, except for Captain Marvel again. No sign of Magneto on board, she thinks to herself. What's that Wolverine said? So Wolverine continues here, can't believe he's going after that flaming asteroid, and he claims to have put his past behind him. So Captain Marvel's thinking, or rather hearing everything. Do you trust Magneto to do the right thing, Storm asks Wolverine. If he gets out of line, we'll nail him to the wall. If you don't, Wolverine thinks, Monica Rambeau, we will. So that's a great little sequence there. Like the way that Silvestri and Rubinstein have kind of indicated this invisible visualization of Captain Marvel. And I really like the way that Silvestri is doing her movements as well. She just seems to enjoy when she's in photon form, moving around at the speed of light, and off flies the Blackbird in search of Magneto once again. And where is he? Or rather, the scene will switch first of all to the Avengers a split second later in the shadow of Angkor Wat's ancient temple. We've got the Avengers, and they get the news from Captain Marvel, and she says Magneto split from the X-Men. He's searching for his asteroid. So Black Knight has a piece of equipment rigged up there, and he's getting readings that point to a major magnetic flux 25 miles due south. So we're getting all this procedural stuff in Roger Stern's story in terms of how characters are tracking and finding each other, and so the plotting is tight, I would say. And then the scene switches to Magneto in the core of the fragment from Asteroid M, and he's thinking to himself, surveying the wreckage. So much has been damaged, so much lost, but the handful of salvageable memory chips and circuits are precious beyond compare. Now, precious for what though? He thinks to himself, still, there is much within these runes that could be used against mutants, and I cannot take everything with me. The explosive charges will have to ensure that nothing remains for others to find. After surviving orbital breakup and re-entry, it's a shame that any of this must be destroyed, but there are some parts of my past that are best left dead and buried. And just as he's thinking that, he opens a closet, and there is his old costume, including the helmet. My helmet, he thinks. Really like this panel from Silvestri, this side view of him with the cloak, and there he is contemplating the helmet. It seems an eternity since I last wore it, he says as he puts it on. And this suit of protected metal mesh, I was the enemy of the X-Men, of all mankind, when I wore this. Mankind certainly hasn't changed. I wonder, have I? So there he is holding the old suit. I really like that the way that Silvestri renders the drapery here. It is one of the strengths of his particular style. But Magneto doesn't take the old suit. I must waste no more time in idle thought. The few things I've retrieved from my past may prove useful to me in the future. So this implies the way he's thinking, that he doesn't have a plan for what to do with them, but he's salvaging them nonetheless in terms of whether he might need them in the future. And then he lifts the asteroid out of the water again. The rest I must bid farewell. We've got the Kirby crackle there too. And again, I like the detail of water falling from the underside of the asteroid fragment, as well as bits of debris. It's all really well realized by Silvestri. Great storytelling, great attention to details. And then, of course, there is a twist, and that is that the Avengers have shown up. Hold it right there, Magneto. Lower the rock nice and slow, says Captain Marvel, and don't make any sudden moves. So remember, in this particular era, it's Captain Marvel who's the leader of the Avengers, not Captain America. And She-Hulk adds, better yet, don't make any moves, period. So Magneto says, get away, I'm warning you, because of course those explosive charges are set to blow. No, I must submerge it before it detonates, he thinks to himself. So the asteroid falls on land. Arrogant fools, you're endangering yourselves, he says. Again, another open border panel there of Thor throwing his hammer. And let's turn the page, continue on with the story. So this is pretty cool. All these bits of debris that are flung at the Avengers, and you can see how they deal with them, whether it is Black Knight there swinging his sword, Captain America standing behind a shield and also shielding Dr. Druid, and Thor swinging his hammer, and She-Hulk simply punching away the fragments. Captain America says, we've gone pretty easy on you up till now, mister, but you can push the Avengers just so far. So, two of the strongest members of the team, Thor and She-Hulk, take swings at Magneto. Bah, he exclaims. like a Silver Age villain. Mere physical force cannot breach my magnetic fields. But what about Captain Marvel? So she's probably the Avengers' most powerful member in this particular era. No, but certain forms of energy can pass through easily, can't they? So she is able to tackle Magneto in a way none of the others are. And just at the point that she's getting the upper hand against Magneto, the X-Men arrive. So now we're going to get the X-Men versus the Avengers. Heads up, darlings, says Rogue as she flies out of the cockpit. The X-Men are back and we got some business to finish. So she goes straight for She-Hulk, toppling her into the lake. That's a really nicely handled sequence. Then the rest of the X-Men deplane, so to speak. This is foolishness. Never should have let Storm turn us around. Not but long as we're here, thinks Wolverine. And then he says aloud, hit him hard, kiddies. The Avengers are no pushovers. Neither are we, says Havoc. Now, of course, Havoc is pretty powerful with those plasma blasts. So who does he send it against? He sends it right at Black Knight and Captain America. And while they're reacting to that, Wolverine runs in with both of or all his claws extruded, and he says, not bad. He sidestepped Havoc's force blast like an ace to Black Knight. Of course, the kid's still green. He telegraphed that by a mile. I don't miss so easy. So now we're going to get Black Knight's mystical blade against Wolverine's adamantium claws. And Wolverine is surprised. That thrust should have cut clean through your pig sticker. My claws, and then Black Knight picks up, are made of razor sharp adamantium, right? Well, my sword's a little tougher. It was forged by a fella named of Merlin. So this is quite the match up. Wolverine versus Black Knight. Adamantium metal, unbreakable metal from the science experiment that bonded the metal with Wolverine's bones. And Merlin's mystical blade that is wielded by Black Knight. But here we pick up at the bottom of the page with Rogue versus She-Hulk. So these two are super strong. You ought to know by now, girl, it takes more than a dunking and a punching to keep me down. So She-Hulk boots her right in the stomach. So who said I want to keep you down, she says. So who's going to get the best of that particular fight? And then, of course, Captain Marvel is doing her thing as well. We didn't want this fight, Havoc, but if you insist, I swear we'll finish it. And as I've said before, I think she's the most powerful member of the Avengers in this era, and I think a favorite of Roger Stern's as well. So she's getting all the best. She's getting some good lines and some good moments in this issue. She hasn't been bested by anyone so far. What about Storm, who's leader of the X-Men in this era? Was I wrong in deciding to return to Magneto's aid, she thinks? The Avengers might well overcome us all. Captain Marvel is everywhere. So Captain America is wondering why Dazzler is fighting them. Maybe just because, or defending Magneto. And she says, maybe just because he's another mutant. You don't know what it's like. We're pariahs wherever we go. All we have are each other. Get back. I don't want to hurt you. So it seems like Thor is able to deflect Dazzler's lasers with his Uru hammer. That's weird. But anyway, the girl turns a deaf ear, Cap. He says to Captain America, she gives us no choice. While all of this melee is ongoing, Magneto is rising up from the ground. Stop, you fool, stop, he exclaims. The asteroid is full of explosive charges. It will self-destruct any second. So that gets everyone's attention. They stop fighting. They turn to listen to him. And Captain Marvel is flying off again. So the others seem frozen in place. In an imperceptibly small fraction of a second, she flashes through the asteroid's twisting corridor and finds the explosive device. Too late. So if she had great moments throughout this issue, this is the one thing that she fails at. Too late to stop the explosive charges from blowing up and exploding Asteroid M. So this is a really good sequence here. I think Silvestri enjoys drawing Captain Marvel in action. The explosion there is good too. Let's turn the page. And we're coming to the end of this particular issue. But as the blast pounds inland, it suddenly encounters resistance in the form of a thin, hastily erected magnetic force field. So Magneto erects the force field in order to protect the Avengers and the X-Men, and he thinks to himself, must ignore the pain in my jaw, must concentrate, struggling mightily to maintain a shield. Magneto repels the deadly hurtling debris from the exploding asteroid from everyone present, but the accompanying shockwave scatters both X-Men and Avengers along the shore like a child's discarded toys. That's an interesting simile there in Stern's third-person narration. So Magneto uses his power to pull the X-Men aboard the hovering Blackbird, which is being piloted by Storm. Because remember, why isn't Storm involved in this fight? Because she doesn't have her powers in this era. She's lost them since Uncanny X-Men 185 and 186. So here the Avengers are pulling themselves together and out of the water as well. The X-Men's craft is already gone from sight, says Thor. Black Knight says, where's Dr. Druid? Hey, you don't suppose? Maybe this would have been better on the page turn. But here we see the Blackbird up in the clouds. The X-Men are going back to the States. And Magneto says, I'm once again in your debt, X-Men. Had you not returned? And it looks like maybe Storm says, it was not an easy decision, Magneto, and your actions have not made it easier. But whether we like it or not, you are a mutant, as are we all. So in a certain sense, mutant blood is thicker than water. And Dazzler says, it was bad enough we had to fight the Avengers. Did we have to run off like that if they were hurt? Magneto says there. He's still wearing the helmet. They were as well shielded as we, Dazzler. They can save themselves. And Wolverine wants to ask about the helmet. He says, something still smells about this. Why are you wearing that old pot on your head again? Look, I was willing to keep you out of the courtroom, but you owe us an explanation, bub. Well, when are we going to get some straight answers? And he still has time to enjoy a cigar. And in the background, who is there aboard the Blackbird 2 except for creepy Dr. Druid? And Havoc's thinking, keep after him, short stuff. There's a lot Magneto's not telling. Rogue's there, she's got thoughts too. Why doesn't the world let up on Magneto? It doesn't matter if he's guilty or not. There's no court in the world that wouldn't hang a mutant. So there's division in the X-Men, this current era's team, regarding their attitude to Magneto. And Roger Stern exploring and exploiting that, and doing a good job of it, I would say, even if Claremont might have had a different perspective on things. But there's Dr. Druid in the back of the cockpit, and he's thinking to himself, it appears there's much dissension amongst these X-Men. I only hope they continue to be so preoccupied. I have managed to mentally screen my presence from them so far, but I cannot do so indefinitely. I must get word of their status and location to the Avengers before I'm discovered. Otherwise, I'll have sacrificed myself for nothing. Okay, so that's the situation at the end of the second issue of this mini-series crossover between the X-Men and the Avengers. Next issue, the Soviets strike back. So they're not finished either. And there we go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men vs. the Avengers, issue number 2 of a 4-issue limited series. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.